Can it wait till Monday? My father said that while I was lying on a gurney in the hallway of Street, Francis Hospital with an IV in my left arm, and a nurse named Janet writing my blood type on a whiteboard above my head. He said it over the phone. I could hear water. A boat motor. Someone in the background asking about sunscreen. My name is Elise Morrow. I'm 33 years old. My father asked if emergency surgery could wait until after his weekend at my brother's lake house. 11 hours later, I woke up in a recovery room alone. Except, I wasn't alone. A woman was sitting in the chair beside my bed. Gray hair in a low bun. A blue blanket folded in her lap. My favorite blanket. The one I'd left behind 3 years ago when I moved out after the divorce. She'd been there since 6 in the morning. She hadn't left once. Not for coffee. Not for food. Not for air. My mother-in-law. My former mother-in-law. The woman I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. The woman nobody called. The woman who came anyway. If stories like mine matter to you, that subscribe button means more than you know. Let me take you back. Warrenton, Virginia. A brick colonial on Crescent Ridge Lane with black shutters and a flagpole in the front yard that my father raised every morning at 7 and lowered every evening at 6. He was that kind of man. Schedules, order, everything in its place, including his children. My father, Dale Morrow, sold commercial real estate for a firm in Fairfax. Good money. Corner office. The kind of job that makes a man feel like the world is a set of transactions and every relationship has a closing date. He drove a Lexus. He wore a Rolex. Not the flashy kind, the understated one. The one that says, I have money, but I don't need you to comment on it. He kept his shoes polished. He kept his lawn cut to exactly 2 3/4 inches. He measured. I watched him measure once with a ruler on a Saturday afternoon while I sat on the porch doing homework. My mother, Karen, was the opposite. She was warm the way a kitchen is warm when bread is baking without trying, without performance, just the natural output of a person who cares about the people around her. She taught kindergarten at Warrenton Elementary for 19 years. She made my lunch every morning through senior year. Turkey and Swiss on wheat, with a pickle spear wrapped in a paper towel so the bread wouldn't get soggy. Every day. She never forgot the pickle. She left when I was 14. Not left, like walked out. Left leg was pushed out so slowly she didn't realize she was falling until she hit the ground. My father's emotional temperature dropped by 1 degree every year of their marriage until the house was cold enough that she started sleeping in the guest room, then the living room, then her sister's house, then a 1-bedroom apartment on Main Street above a yoga studio. The divorce was quiet. My father told me and my brother Keith at the kitchen table on a Sunday morning. He was eating a grapefruit with a serrated spoon. Your mother and I have decided to separate. She'll have you on weekends. I'll have you during the week. He said it the way he'd announce a change in the mowing schedule. No emotion. No context. Just logistics. Keith, who was 16, shrugged. He was already my father's copy. Same posture, same dismissive chin tilt, same way of looking at people like they were appraisals waiting to be completed. Keith played lacrosse. Drove the truck Dad bought him for his 16th birthday, a used Ford F-150 that cost more than my mother's yearly clothing budget. He wore Vineyard Vines polos and boat shoes before he'd ever been on a boat. He had already learned the most important Morrow family skill, looking at someone's pain and finding a way to make it not his problem. I cried, not quietly. The kind of crying where your shoulders shake and your chin won't stop trembling. My father looked at me across the kitchen table, set down his serrated spoon, and said, Elise, it's not the end of the world. People separate all the time. If you need to talk to someone, I'll find a counselor. He never found a counselor. He found Linda. A dental hygienist from Culpeper with highlights and a white Audi and a laugh that sounded like wind chimes in a room where nobody wanted wind chimes. Linda moved in 8 months after the divorce was finalized. She redecorated the kitchen the first week. Replaced the curtains my mother had sewn by hand yellow cotton with tiny sunflowers with gray linen panels from Pottery Barn. She moved the recipe box from the counter to a shelf in the garage. She bought a KitchenAid mixer she never used and a set of copper pans that hung on a rack above the island like trophies from a war she hadn't fought. My mother's watercolors, landscapes of the Blue Ridge she'd painted on Sunday afternoons while I sat beside her, mixing colors on a paper plate, were taken down and replaced with Linda's decorative mirrors from Home Goods. 3 of them, in a row, above the couch where my mother used to read to me. My mother took the watercolors and a suitcase and the recipe box from the kitchen counter. She took the cast iron skillet, the one she'd used for grilled cheese sandwiches every Saturday since I was 5. She took a box of photographs from the top shelf of the hall closet. She left everything else. The furniture, the dishes, the Christmas ornaments we'd made together in kindergarten. She said later she couldn't take them because every time she looked at them, she saw the house they belonged in, and that house wasn't hers anymore. She got the 1-bedroom apartment above the yoga studio. He got the house, the Lexus, the children during the week, the neighbors, the church, and the narrative. The narrative was the most valuable asset. You can lose the house and the car and the savings. But if you keep the story, if you control what people believe about why you keep everything that matters. My father's narrative was simple. Karen needed space. She's finding herself. We wish her well. He said it at church. He said it at school functions. He said it to the neighbors. He said it with the same flat, practiced tone that made it sound like a press release, which is exactly what it was. My mother's truth was more complicated. Her truth involved a husband who measured lawns and timed meals and treated warmth like an accounting error. A man who never raised his voice because he never needed to. His silence was louder than any shout. A man who could stand in a room full of people and make one person invisible without anyone noticing. She didn't tell her truth. She couldn't compete with his narrative. So she took the skillet and the watercolors and the recipe box, and she moved to a 1-bedroom apartment and started over. Your mother wasn't happy, he said. She needed to find herself. Some women go through that, like it was menopause, like leaving was a phase. Like the woman who'd packed turkey sandwiches for 19 years just woke up one morning and decided she'd rather live above a yoga studio. My mother didn't defend herself. That was her pattern. She absorbed. She accommodated. She smiled when she should have screamed, and screamed when no one was listening. She called me every Wednesday and Saturday night without fail. She never missed a call. My father, who saw me every day, rarely asked about my day. My mother, from a 1-bedroom apartment 8 miles away, asked about everything. How was the math test? What did you eat for lunch? Is your father remembering to buy the shampoo you like? He wasn't. He bought the bulk brand from Costco. It smelled like a hospital. She brought me my shampoo every weekend, tucked into her purse like contraband. My father never asked how I felt about Linda. He didn't ask how I felt about the curtains or the watercolors or the recipe box in the garage. He assumed that if something was decided, it was settled. Questions were inefficiencies. Feelings were paperwork. He took Keith to a Nationals game for his 17th birthday. They sat behind home plate. $400 a ticket. Keith posted pictures on Instagram. My father was smiling. The kind of smile that requires a son who looks like you and acts like you, and never asks about the person who used to sit in the kitchen painting mountains. For my 17th birthday, I got a gift card to Barnes & Noble. $50. No card. No dinner. Just a plastic rectangle in an envelope on the counter. My mother baked me a chocolate cake in her one-bedroom apartment, and we ate it on the floor because she didn't have a dining table yet. When I was 17, my father hosted Thanksgiving at the house. Linda cooked. She made a turkey with a honey glaze she'd found on Pinterest. My father carved it at the head of the table and said, "Now this is a proper Thanksgiving." My mother was eating leftover soup in her apartment. Alone. I called her that night from my bedroom. She answered on the first ring. "Happy Thanksgiving, Elise." "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine, honey. I had soup." "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. You're where you're supposed to be. I'm right here." She was always right there, even when nobody was looking. Even when the narrative said she'd left. Keith didn't call her. Not on Thanksgiving. Not on Christmas. Not on her birthday. He'd already chosen his team. My father's team. The team with the Lexus and the lake house and the Rolex and the right-sounding answers to questions nobody was asking. After high school, I went to James Madison University. Studied nursing. I wanted to be the person in the room when things went wrong. I'd spent my childhood watching my mother be pushed out of rooms. I wanted to be the one who stayed. I graduated in 2015. Top 10 in my class. My clinical instructor, a woman named Margaret Howell, who'd been an ER nurse for 28 years, wrote in my evaluation, "Elise has the rarest quality in nursing. She sees the person, not the patient." I keep that evaluation in a folder in my desk. Some words carry you further than you'd expect. I got a job at Fauquier Hospital. Night shifts. 12 hours. The kind of work where you see people at their worst, and your job is to make sure they don't stay there. I was good at it. My charge nurse, Deborah, told me in my second year that I had the hands. She meant steady, calm under pressure. The kind of hands that don't shake when the monitor starts screaming. I got those from my mother, not my father. My father's hands were always holding something, a phone, a glass, a steering wheel, a grapefruit spoon, a remote control, tools of control and comfort and self-service. My mother's hands were always giving something, a sandwich, a blanket, a squeeze on the arm that meant, "I'm here and I know and you don't have to explain." There's a moment I think about from my second year at the hospital, 3 a.m. A woman came in after a car accident. 47 years old. Fractured pelvis. Her husband was in the waiting room. Her daughter was on a plane from Dallas. The woman was in pain, and she was scared, and she kept saying, "Is someone there? Is someone coming?" I held her hand for 45 minutes, through the x-rays, through the IV placement, through the wait for the orthopedic surgeon. I held her hand and I said, "I'm here. I'm not leaving." That's what nursing is. Not the charts, not the vitals, not the medication calculations. It's the hand. It's the staying. It's the specific physical act of being present when the world is spinning and someone needs a fixed point. My father has never been a fixed point. He's a schedule. He's a plan. He's a Lexus and a lawn and a lake house and a Monday that's always more convenient than today. Grace is a fixed point. She always has been. My father came to my nursing school graduation. He sat in the 3rd row. He clapped once when my name was called. Afterward, he shook my hand, the same handshake he'd been giving me since I was a teenager, firm and brief, like the closing of a deal, and said, "Good. Steady career. Benefits." My mother drove up from Warrenton. She brought a bouquet of daisies she'd picked from her neighbor's garden with permission and a card that said, "I always knew you'd be the one in the room when it mattered." She hugged me for so long that the people behind us had to walk around. Keith didn't come. He was at a sales conference in Charlotte. He sent a text. "Congrats, sis." No, period. No follow-up. No call. My father took me to dinner at a steakhouse in Fairfax. Linda came. She ordered a salad and spent most of the dinner on her phone. My father talked about a commercial property he was developing near Dulles Airport. He did not ask about the hospital. He did not ask about my patients. He did not ask what it felt like to stand in a room at 3 in the morning and hold the hand of a stranger who was scared and alone. I didn't tell him. He wasn't the kind of man you told that kind of thing. I met Daniel in 2016. He was a physical therapist at the same hospital. Tall, quiet, glasses. He kept pushing up his nose. He brought me coffee on my first night shift without asking how I took it. He'd noticed, black with 1 sugar. That's a man who pays attention to the right things. He proposed on a Thursday evening, not with a ring, with a key to his apartment, wrapped in a note that said, "I want you to have a place to come home to that isn't the hospital." That's a man who understands what a nurse needs after a 12-hour shift. Not roses, not speeches. A door that opens for you. We married in 2017. Small ceremony at a vineyard in Middleburg. 30 guests. My father came. He shook Daniel's hand and said, "Take care of her," like he was signing a warranty card. My mother came. She wore a blue dress she'd bought at a consignment shop in Warrenton. She cried through the ceremony and laughed through the reception and danced with Daniel's father to a song neither of them knew the words to. She was the warmest person in the room. She's always been the warmest person in the room, even when the room didn't deserve her. My father danced with Linda at the reception. A slow song, something from the 80s. He held her the way he held everything at a measured distance, with correct posture, like he was following instructions he'd read in a manual. My mother danced with Daniel's father. They didn't know the song. They didn't care. They made it up. They looked ridiculous, and they looked happy. And when the song ended, Daniel's father bowed, and my mother curtsied, and the whole room laughed. That's the difference. My father dances by the book. My mother dances because the music is playing. Daniel's mother, Grace, was the second warmest person in the room, but only because my mother got there first. Let me tell you about Grace Morrow. Grace was 64 when I married Daniel. Silver hair she wore in a low bun. Blue cardigans from L. Bean. Reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She smelled like lavender soap and fresh bread because she baked every Saturday morning without exception. Sourdough. Always sourdough. She said the starter was older than Daniel. She remembered my birthday. Not just the date, the time. "You were born at 3:17 a.m., she'd say. Daniel told me once and I never forgot. My father had to check his phone calendar to remember the date. She made chicken soup when I was sick. Not from a can. The kind with fresh dill and wide noodles and carrots cut into coins. She'd drive it to our apartment in a ceramic pot wrapped in a dish towel and leave it on the step with a note. Eat. Rest. Call if you need anything. She taught me how to make sourdough. On a Sunday morning in her kitchen in Mystic, flour on both our hands, she showed me how to fold the dough and wait. "Bread takes patience," she said. "The starter's alive. It works on its own schedule. You can't rush it. You can only trust it." I think she was talking about more than bread. She called me every Sunday evening at 7. Without fail. She asked about my week, my patients, whether the rosemary plant on my windowsill was still alive. She remembered everything. She remembered the name of the patient I'd told her about 3 weeks earlier and asked if he'd gone home. She remembered that I'd been thinking about taking a pottery class and asked if I'd signed up yet. My father couldn't remember my birthday without his phone. She kept a photo of me on her refrigerator. Not Daniel and me. Just me. From a Thanksgiving at her house, laughing at something I don't remember. She never took it down. Not even after the divorce. Daniel and I had 4 good years. He cooked breakfast every Sunday, eggs scrambled soft with chives from the pot on the windowsill. He left notes in my scrub's pocket before night shifts. Come home safe. I'll be up. He usually was. Sitting on the couch with a book open on his chest, half asleep, the reading lamp still on. But good isn't always enough. Good needs timing. And we ran out of timing. The divorce happened in 2021. It was amicable in the way that word is used when neither person has the energy to fight. We didn't hate each other. We just didn't fit. Daniel wanted kids immediately. I wanted to finish my nurse practitioner certification. He wanted to move to Chicago for a better job. I wanted to stay near the hospital that had just promoted me. The love was real. The timing wasn't. Daniel moved to Chicago. We didn't keep in touch. When you divide a life, some pieces don't have a forwarding address. But Grace was different. When Daniel told her about the divorce, she called me that evening. Not to plead. Not to negotiate. She called to say, "This changes nothing between you and me. You are my daughter. The paperwork doesn't change that." I cried for 20 minutes. She stayed on the phone for all 20. My father's reaction to the divorce was one sentence. Should have seen it coming. These things have a shelf life. Like marriage was a carton of milk. He didn't ask if I was okay. He asked if I was keeping the apartment. Keith texted, "Sorry to hear." 3 words. The same man who texted, "Congrats, sis," at my graduation. 2 words for celebration. 3 for collapse. That's his emotional range. My mother called every day for a month. She didn't try to fix it. She just listened. She'd sit on the phone while I cried and ate ice cream out of the container and watched bad television. She never said, "You'll find someone better." She said, "You're still you. That doesn't change." Then 3 years happened. 3 years of meaning to call, meaning to visit, meaning to send a birthday card. 3 years of "I'll do it next week," turning into "I can't believe it's been this long," turning into the specific silence that grows between people who love each other but have forgotten how to reach across the gap. I hadn't spoken to Grace Morrow since February 2022. The last call? A Sunday. She asked about my job. I told her about a patient who'd coded and come back. She said, "You're the reason someone got to go home." I said I'd call next week. I didn't call next week. I meant to. I had her number saved. I opened the contact screen 3 times in January. Once I got as far as pressing dial before I hung up on the first ring. It wasn't that I didn't love Grace. It was that calling her meant admitting the marriage was really over. That the Sunday dinners were really over. That the sourdough mornings were really over. Every time I thought about dialing, I felt the weight of everything I'd lost when Daniel moved to Chicago. Not Daniel. The world around Daniel. His mother's kitchen. Her reading glasses on the chain. The photo on her refrigerator. Calling Grace meant revisiting all of it. So I didn't call. And she didn't push. She sent a birthday card in March 2022. Handwritten. "I hope this year brings you peace. Love, Grace." I put it on my nightstand and stared at it for a week. I didn't respond. She sent another one in March 2023. Same handwriting. Still here. Still counting. Love, Grace. I put that one next to the first one. The 3rd year. 2024. No card arrived. I checked the mailbox every day for 2 weeks in March. Nothing. I think she stopped sending them because she thought I wanted her to stop. She was wrong. I wanted her to send them forever. I just didn't know how to say that. That's the cruelest thing about silence between people who love each other. It looks like a choice from the outside. But from the inside, it's just fear wearing comfortable shoes. What would you do if someone you loved slipped away not because of a fight, but because of silence? If you've ever let time do the work that fear should have done, drop your honest answer in the comments. The call came on April 12th, 2025. A Saturday. I was at home, making dinner. Pasta. I was standing at the stove when the pain hit. Not like cramps. Not like anything I'd felt before. This was a knife. Low. Left side. I bent over the counter. The wooden spoon hit the tile floor. I knew immediately. I'm a nurse. I knew what an ectopic rupture feels like from the textbook. Now I knew what it felt like in my body. Two different kinds of knowing. The textbook doesn't prepare you for the way the floor tilts. My friend Rosalind lives 4 blocks away. She's a paralegal at a family law firm in Warrenton. We met at a trivia night at a bar neither of us liked, and bonded over the fact that we both knew the capital of Bhutan. She's the kind of friend who shows up with wine when you're sad and coffee when you're not, and never asks you to explain the difference. I called her. My voice was thin. I said 2 words, hospital. Now, she was at my door in 6 minutes. Still wearing her pajamas, keys already in her hand. She drove me to street. Frances, in her Honda Civic, with the hazard lights on and one hand on the wheel and the other on my arm. She ran 3 red lights. The first one, she slowed down. The second one, she didn't. The third one, a truck honked, and she said, very calmly, I hear you, sir, and I don't care. Rosalind is 5'2" and 115 pounds. She drives like a woman who has spent 10 years reading court documents about people who didn't act fast enough. She pulled into the emergency entrance, left the car running with the door open, and helped me through the sliding doors with one arm around my waist and the other holding my phone because I'd dropped it in the parking lot and she'd picked it up without stopping. That's friendship, not the birthday dinners, not the texts. The 4 a.m. phone call and the 3 red lights and the phone she picked up off the asphalt while carrying another human being into a hospital. She told me later she was talking to me the entire drive, but I don't remember a single word. The emergency room at street. Frances was bright. Too bright. The fluorescent lights made everything look like a photograph with the saturation turned up. The waiting room had 12 chairs, 9 of them occupied. A man with his arm in a makeshift sling. A woman holding a toddler who'd stopped crying but hadn't started smiling. A teenager scrolling his phone with his foot propped up on a chair. I was triaged in 7 minutes. That's fast. When they triage you fast, it means they're worried. The triage nurse, a woman named Deborah with short gray hair and a lanyard full of security badges, looked at my vitals and said, we're taking you straight back. She didn't say, don't worry. She didn't say, you'll be fine. She said, we're taking you straight back. I've been a nurse long enough to know the difference. At the hospital, it moved fast. Triage, blood work, ultrasound. Sarah Hadley, the on-call surgeon, came in and explained what was happening in the calm, measured way that doctors deliver information they wish they didn't have. Ruptured ectopic pregnancy. Internal bleeding. Surgery now. Do you have family we should call? I gave them 3 numbers. My father, my mother, my brother. My father picked up on the 4th ring. I could hear water. A boat motor. Keith's kids laughing. Hey, Elise. What's going on? Dad, I'm at street. Francis. I need emergency surgery. Ruptured ectopic. A pause. 3 seconds. We're at Keith's lake house. Can it wait till Monday? Can it wait till Monday? The nurse was writing my blood type on the whiteboard. The surgeon was scrubbing in. My body was bleeding internally. And my father wanted to know if dying could be rescheduled to accommodate his weekend plans. No, Dad. It can't wait till Monday. Well, we just got here. Can you call your neighbor or something? Karen? Or that friend of yours? Karen. My mother. He hadn't called her by name in years without making it sound like a menu item he didn't order. Never mind, Dad. I hung up. I called my mother. Voicemail. I called Keith. He picked up. I could hear the same boat, motor, the same laughter. Elise, we literally just docked. Can this... I hung up. Rosalind was standing next to me. She'd heard both calls. She didn't say anything. She squeezed my hand. Then she scrolled through the emergency contacts on my old phone, the one I kept in my purse, because the battery still held a charge, and it had numbers I hadn't transferred. She found a contact saved under Mom M. She pressed call. 4:30 a.m. Saturday morning. A number Grace hadn't seen before. A voice she'd never heard. A sentence that would get a 68-year-old woman out of bed, into her car, and onto a dark highway before the sun was up. Rosalind said, "You don't know me, but I'm calling about Elise. She's at Street, Francis Hospital. She is going into emergency surgery. Her father said it could wait till Monday." "It can't," Grace answered on the first ring. Because Grace is the kind of person who doesn't screen calls at 4:30 a.m. She picks up. She always picks up. That's the kind of person Grace Morrow is. The kind who answers the phone at 4:30 inches the morning. Rosalind told Grace everything she knew. The ruptured ectopic, the surgery, the father who said Monday, the brother who said call a neighbor, the mother on voicemail 3,000 miles away. Grace said 7 words. "I'm here." "Yes, I'll be there." Then she hung up. Rosalind told me later she'd never heard a voice that calm at 4:30 inches the morning. It was like she'd been waiting for that call her whole life, Rosalind said. Like she'd rehearsed it. She hadn't rehearsed it. She was just ready. Some people are always ready. They don't need a plan. They just need a reason. And she drove. From Mystic, Connecticut. An hour and 40 minutes. At 5 in the morning, on a Saturday, she packed 3 things. The blue blanket from my old closet, the one with the frayed edges that I'd left behind when I moved out. A thermos of chamomile tea. And a paperback novel, in case I was sleeping and she had to wait. She left the house in Mystic at 5:04 a.m. I know, because she told me later she checked the clock on the microwave before she walked out the door. She didn't change out of her pajama pants. She put on a coat and her reading glasses and her slip-on shoes, and she drove. The highway was empty at 5 in the morning. She said she could see the sunrise in her rearview mirror the whole way. Pink turning to orange, turning to gold. She said she talked to me the entire drive even though I wasn't in the car. "I told you to hold on," she said. "I told you I was coming. I told you to wait for me." She arrived at Street. Francis, at 6:47 a.m., I was already in surgery. She told Janet at the front desk who she was. Janet looked at the intake form. Emergency contacts: Dale Morrow, father, Karen Morrow, mother, Keith Morrow, brother. Grace wasn't on the list. "I'm her mother-in-law," Grace said. "Former," Janet corrected, reading the file. "Current," Grace said. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She said one word and sat down. Janet told me later that in 17 years at that front desk, she'd never seen anyone correct a form with one word and mean it that completely. Janet told me later she'd never seen a woman that age sit in a hospital chair with that kind of stillness. Like she'd been training for it. Like waiting was a skill she'd practiced. She waited 10.5 hours in a vinyl chair. In a waiting room with fluorescent lights and a television tuned to a morning show, nobody was watching. She didn't leave. Not once. Not for coffee. Not for the cafeteria. Not for fresh air. Not for the bathroom until 11 a.m. And then she asked Janet to hold her chair because she didn't want to lose her spot. Her spot. In a waiting room with 12 empty chairs. She didn't want to lose her spot. She ate a granola bar from her purse at noon and asked the desk nurse for updates every 90 minutes. Janet, the nurse at the front desk, told me later that Grace asked the same question each time. Is she still in surgery? And each time Janet said yes, Grace said, thank you. I'll be right here. The lake house weekend cost $4,200. My father spent it watching Keith drive a motorboat. Grace packed a thermos and a blanket and drove 2 hours in the dark. I came out of surgery at 4:15 p.m. Hadley told me later that if I'd waited 2 more hours, I might not have made it. The rupture had caused significant internal bleeding. They'd managed it, but it was close. I woke up at 5:30. Groggy, machines beeping. I couldn't feel my left side. The room smelled like antiseptic and the air conditioning was too cold. Then I felt a hand on mine. I turned my head, and there was Grace. Silver hair, low bun, reading glasses on the chain around her neck. Eyes red from 12 hours in a fluorescent-lit room. A blue blanket folded in her lap. My blue blanket, the one I'd left behind 3 years ago. Grace? I'm here. How did you know? Rosalind called me. She said someone should be there. Someone should be there. That sentence. That's what my father didn't say. That's what Keith didn't say. That's what the silence of a lake house and a boat motor and sunscreen and laughter said in their absence. Someone should be there. And someone was... I started crying. Not from the surgery. Not from the anesthesia. Not from the IV or the monitor or the cold room or the bandages on my left side. I was crying because the person holding my hand had driven 2 hours in the dark for a woman she hadn't spoken to in 3 years, carrying a blanket and a thermos and a novel because a stranger on a phone told her I was alone. And my father, who'd known me for 33 years, who'd measured the lawn to 2 3/4 inches and rotated the tires on a schedule and organized every detail of every day of his life, couldn't find the time to leave a boat dock. Grace didn't say, it's okay. She didn't say, don't cry. She said, I'm here now. You don't have to hold anything by yourself. That sentence. That's the sentence my father has never said. Not once in 33 years. Not because he can't. Because it doesn't occur to him that other people might need help carrying things. You kept the blanket, I said. Of course I kept the blanket. It's been 3 years. I know how long it's been. I counted. She said that with a half smile. The kind that holds grief and love in the same expression. Like a glass that's half empty and half full at the same time. And neither is the wrong answer. Do you think she should have called her father back? If you already know the answer, drop it in the comments. The first night after surgery, I woke up at 2 a.m. The hospital room was dark, except for the glow of the monitor and the soft green light from the hallway. Grace was asleep in the chair. Not reclined. Upright. Her glasses were on the table. The blanket was draped over both of us, one end on my bed, the other tucked around her knees. She had connected us with a blanket. Like a bridge. Like she was saying, even in her sleep, I'm still here. I watched her breathe for 10 minutes. Even her breathing was steady. Consistent. Like bread rising. Like something you could set your clock to. Janet came in at 3 to check my vitals. She saw Grace asleep in the chair and whispered, How long has she been here? Since 6 this morning. She's not on the contact list. She's the only one who came. Janet looked at Grace. Then at me. She pulled an extra blanket from the closet and draped it over Grace's shoulders without waking her. She didn't say anything. She just did it. Nurses know. When you spend your life in rooms where people show up or don't, you learn to recognize the ones who show up. Grace stayed for 3 days. She slept on the couch in my apartment. She made soup, the same chicken soup with dill and wide noodles. She washed my dishes. She fed Wednesday, my cat, who usually hides from strangers. Wednesday sat on Grace's lap the first night like they'd known each other for years. Cats know. They always know. Grace paid my hospital bill, $11,340. She wrote a check at the billing office on Monday morning without flinching. "I'll pay you back," I said. "Elise, you are my daughter. The paperwork doesn't change that." Those words, those exact words, the same ones she'd said the night of the divorce. She hadn't forgotten them. She hadn't modified them. She'd been carrying them like a blanket, folded and ready for 3 years. My father called Monday, 2 days after the surgery. "Hey, Elise, how'd the thing go?" The thing. My emergency surgery was the thing. Like a dentist appointment. Like an oil change that he'd missed because he was at the lake. "I almost died, Dad." "Well, you didn't." "That's good." "Where were you?" "I told you. We were at Keith's." "I know where you were. I'm asking where you were." He was quiet for 4 seconds. Then, "Elise, you have friends. You have neighbors. You don't need me for everything. I needed you for this. And I would have been there on Monday." Monday. The surgery was Saturday. Hadley said 2 more hours, and I might not have made it. Monday was 48 hours of boat motors and sunscreen after the margin was measured in minutes. "Dad, if I had waited for your Monday, there might not have been a Monday." He didn't respond to that. He changed the subject to Keith's promotion. I hung up after 4 minutes. Grace was sitting in my kitchen when I set the phone down. She'd heard the call. She didn't comment. She poured me a cup of tea and set it in front of me. Chamomile. The same kind from the thermos. "He's not going to change, is he?" I asked. "No." "Then what do I do?" "You stop waiting for him to become the father you needed. And you let the people who showed up keep showing up." I wrote that sentence on a napkin. I still have it, folded in quarters in my bedside drawer. Grace's words in blue ballpoint pen. The weeks after surgery were slow. Recovery from a ruptured ectopic is physical and emotional. You lose something. Not a child exactly, not yet, but the possibility of one. The absence leaves a shape that has no name and no casserole recipe and no Hallmark card. Grace understood that without being told. She never said, "It'll be okay." She never said, "Everything happens for a reason." She said, "Today is today. Tomorrow is tomorrow." And she showed up for both. On the 3rd day, she drove me to the grocery store. I wasn't ready for a full trip. We bought milk, bread, eggs, and a pint of ice cream that we ate in the car in the parking lot with 2 plastic spoons. She told me about Daniel's new apartment in Chicago. It has a balcony the size of a bath mat, and about the sourdough starter, which she'd named Herbert and which was now 31 years old. "Herbert has outlasted 2 marriages, a recession, and a global pandemic," she said. "He's the most stable man in my life." I laughed. Really laughed. For the first time since the surgery. The kind of laugh that arrives without permission and stays longer than expected. Grace laughed too. 2 women in a Honda in a Safeway parking lot, eating ice cream at 11 in the morning, laughing about a sourdough starter named Herbert. That's what recovery looks like. Not the stitches. Not the medication. Not the follow-up appointments. Recovery looks like a parking lot and a plastic spoon and someone who makes you laugh when you forgot you could. My father didn't visit. Not that week. Not the next. Not the week after. He sent a text on April 28th. 16 days after surgery. 16 days after I'd been cut open and stitched back together and woken up to a woman who wasn't supposed to be there, but was. 16 days of silence from a man who measured his lawn to 2 3/4 inches but couldn't measure the distance between his boat dock and his daughter's hospital bed. Thinking of you. Call when you're up for it. Thinking of you. 4 words that cost nothing. 4 words that arrive 16 days late and pretend to be on time. Grace had spent $4,200 on a lake house she never went to, 2 hours of driving in the dark, 3 days on my couch, and $11,000 at the billing office. My father spent 4 words. Keith called once. May 5th. He asked how I was holding up. I said I was fine. He said good, and told me about the new dock he was building at the lake house. I listened for 3 minutes and hung up when he started talking about composite lumber. My mother found out from Rosalind. She called me that Sunday and cried for 10 minutes. She'd been in Oregon visiting her sister. She didn't know. When she found out my father had said, "Can it wait till Monday?" she went quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before a woman rewrites every excuse she's ever made for a man she used to love. "I'm done making excuses for him," she said. "Mom, it's fine." "It's not fine, Elise. It's not fine, and it never was." Within 3 months, things shifted. Keith and my father took a trip to Hilton Head in July. They didn't invite me. They didn't tell me. I found out from Linda's Instagram. 2 photos. A beach. A steak dinner. My father was smiling. The kind of smile that requires someone else's absence to maintain. I didn't call. I didn't comment. I didn't post a response. I didn't do anything at all. And silence, from the other side, is the loudest sound a daughter can make. My father is a man who tracks transactions. When the deposits stop, he notices. My father noticed. He texted, "Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay?" I wrote back, "I'm fine. I was just waiting for Monday." He didn't respond. Rosalind told 2 people. Not out of malice. Out of the kind of fury that doesn't stay quiet when a man chooses a boat motor over his daughter's surgery. Those 2 told others. By August, my father's 4th of July cookout had 6 cancellations for the first time in 11 years. Linda asked him what happened. He said people were busy. But people weren't busy. People had heard. The man who mowed his lawn to 2 3/4 inches couldn't mow away the fact that his daughter almost died while he was asking about dock fees. The neighborhood didn't confront him. They just stopped coming. Which, for a man who measures everything, was the one measurement he couldn't fix. My mother moved to Fredericksburg last fall, closer to me. 22 minutes instead of an hour. She brings soup on Sundays. Not fancy soup. The kind that means I drove 22 minutes because you matter more than convenience. I called Grace the day I got home from work last Thursday. No reason. No emergency. Just to hear her voice. "Grace? Elise, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine." I just wanted to call. She was quiet for a moment. I could hear bread in the background. The sound of a mixer. Saturday baking. You have no idea how long I've been waiting for a call like this. 3 years? 3 years, 2 months, and 11 days. But who's counting? She laughed. I laughed. It was the kind of laugh that doesn't need a punchline because the punchline is just 2 people who love each other being on the phone again. Grace visits every other weekend. She drives from Mystic. An hour and 40 minutes. She brings sourdough bread. She brings the blue blanket, which now lives permanently on my couch. She brings stories about Daniel, who's doing well in Chicago and has started dating someone named Claire. She says Claire seems nice. I hope she is. Grace asked me once, months after the surgery, why I hadn't called her in those 3 years before the hospital. I thought the divorce meant I lost you too. She looked at me over her reading glasses. The chain caught the light. Elise, 3 years doesn't erase 6. You were my daughter for 6 years. And you were my daughter after that. Time doesn't subtract. It just makes people forget to count. I wrote that down too. Same napkin. Folded in quarters. Blue ballpoint pen. I set 2 conditions for my father. First, he acknowledges what he said. Not, "I was busy." Not, "You're overreacting." He says, "You needed me. and I chose the lake house. Second, he calls Grace and thanks her for being there, for the blanket, for the check. He hasn't met either condition. Keith hasn't met them either. Keith called me once more, in August, to invite me to a barbecue at the lake house. The same lake house, the same dock, the same water where a boat motor was running while a nurse was writing my blood type on a whiteboard. It'll be fun, he said. Dad's grilling. Linda's making her potato salad. Keith. Yeah? I almost died at that hospital, and you asked me to call my neighbor. He was quiet for 5 seconds. Then, Elise, you're always so dramatic. Dramatic. That was his word. Like a ruptured ectopic pregnancy is a performance. Like 11 hours of surgery is a scene from a movie I was directing for attention. I didn't respond. I hung up, and I haven't called him back. My father's Thanksgiving table had 8 people last year. Dale, Linda, Keith, Keith's wife Brooke, their 2 kids, and 2 of Linda's friends from her book club. My mother told me she heard from the neighbors that the turkey was dry and Keith's kids broke a wine glass. My Thanksgiving had 5 people. Me, Rosalind, my mother, Grace, and Wednesday, the cat. Grace made sourdough rolls. My mother made the turkey with a proper brine, not a Pinterest recipe. Rosalind brought 3 bottles of wine and a story about a judge she works for who fell asleep during a deposition. We laughed for 20 minutes. The kind of laughing where your stomach hurts and you have to set your fork down. It was the best Thanksgiving I'd ever had, because everyone at that table had shown up when it mattered, and not one of them had asked if it could wait till Monday. So the phone stays quiet. Not forever. But for now, the door isn't locked, but I'm not holding it open. My name is Elise Morrow. I'm 33 years old. I almost died on a Saturday in April. My father asked if it could wait till Monday. My brother-in-law couldn't leave the dock. My mother was 3,000 miles away and would have swum home if she'd known. The person who showed up was a 68-year-old woman with silver hair and a blanket she'd kept in a closet for 3 years, waiting for a reason to bring it back. She answered the phone at 4:30 a.m. She drove 2 hours in the dark. She sat in a plastic chair for 11 hours. She paid a bill she didn't owe. And when I asked her why, she said, because nobody should wake up alone after something like that. She was right. Nobody should. Some people promise to be there and mean it on their terms. Some people show up with a blanket and a thermos and don't leave until the person they love is awake. If you know someone like Grace, someone who answers the phone before dawn and drives through the dark without being asked, you already know the difference. And if you've been waiting for someone who keeps asking you to wait, maybe it's time to stop counting Mondays. The people who matter don't need a convenient day. They just come. I'll be right here on the porch when you're ready for the next one.